She is a great marriage counselor. A great marriage counselor was when Shirley would go to her and talk to her about how stupid I was. And she would always agree with Shirley. Always. Always. I told her one day, I said, Mama, you could be on my side one time. And she says, if you were ever right, I'd be on your side. My sister Rhonda had married Bill. He was a student now. He'd come back from his service in Korea. Spent a couple years or a year over there or whatever, and so immediately enrolled in Northwestern over at Natchitoches. And so they'd only been married a little while, and Rhonda said, well, he's not what I think he should be. And he's not everything that I thought he was. So she packed her a little bag and she come back home. And I happened to be at home that day when Mother put her bags back in the car, drove her back to Bill's house, and said, Rhonda, there are times when we all were disappointed. But that gave you no reason. That gave you no reason to come home. See, you shared a vow at the altar of the Lord. Now, this is just Mama and her marriage counseling. She said, you take care of each other. And that was a little over 40 years ago. And I talked to Rhonda the other day, and she seems to be happily married to Bill. Way to go, Edith. At the end of the day, it's family. Family will still be there. So those that God has placed in your care, those that God has given you to walk alongside you, those that God has entrusted you to raise in the fear and in the admonition of the Lord, cherish them and honor them and love them. Everybody say, take care of the family. Because at the end of the day, that's what we'll have. Number 4, when problems come, face them with courage. Everybody will have them. She says, I've had them. You will have them. It takes courage and character, 2 gifts from Almighty God, to help us on those days when we have issues and when we have problems. She said, if you're going to win in life, you've got to be able to stand up and look your problems eyeball to eyeball and says, we have decided to win this battle. They're gifts from God. Problems, whether it be financial or whether it be relational, whether it be emotional, whatever the case was. I remember my father was a state policeman, and we were transferred to Allen Parish. He was with the stock patrol at that moment, and he covered several parishes down that way, and we only lived there for about a year. But during that year, Mother learned how to make gumbo from some ladies that could not speak English. And I remember going to church whenever every other Wednesday night was all done in French. Comment allez-vous, monsieur? Pray the Lord. This is the closest I've come to speaking French. Pray the Lord, everybody. Pray the Lord. She found a way to make things happen when nothing was happening. When there was little given into her hands, she could make a whole bunch. And somehow during that year in Allen Parish, living in the middle of a rice field among a bunch of French Canadians, she figured that we should eat rice 3 times a day. And after we came back to North Louisiana and settled in Wynn Parish, which was home, she continued making rice for breakfast, rice for lunch, and rice for dinner. But then I got to the place, I didn't like rice. I didn't want rice. I hated rice. And so she'd make this big pot of rice, but let me tell you what she did every meal at lunch and dinner. She made a big pot of rice and a little bitty pot of what I called smashed potatoes. So everybody at the table ate rice and gravy. George ate smashed potatoes and gravy. So she knew how to take a little and make much out of it. She says, look at adversary in the face. Deal with it. Don't back down. Don't give in. Got a phone call from Mama one day. She says, everybody needs to come home. Shirley and I was already married. Mother would not live more than a couple more years. That's the reason I'm wearing my white flower today. Some of you old folks, do any of you old folks remember on Mother's Day? The young folks will not remember this, but on how many old folks do we have in the house, please? Okay, we have 17. Good to see y'all. In the old days, if your mother was living, you wore a red flower. And the women would wear pretty red carnations, and then if your mother was deceased, you wore white. Well, I went back in time today, and Miss Cade sent me a white flower. God bless her. I wear this in memory of Mama. So Mother calls. And when Mother called, it did not matter where you were. 5 children headed to where home was. And we all gathered at the table that day. And then at the end of the meal, as we were nearing the end, she stood up. She says, I've got something I need to say to you all. You see, over the previous 12 months, she had had 4 major surgeries. 4 major surgeries. And as a result of all these surgeries, they were giving her a lot of pain medication. And so she was filling every prescription that the doctor ordered. And we'd go down to Emerson Drugstore and pick up bottle after bottle after bottle of painkillers. Unaware to any of us. See, here's this wonderful Christian woman, this wonderful Christian mother that could look a problem in the eye and says, I'm going to win. And with courage, she stood before her children and she says, I have become addicted to painkillers. She says, I have called a hospital in Shreveport. She says, I am leaving in the morning to go there and I'll be there for the next 6 weeks. She says, I will win this battle with God's grace and God's power and with your love and your support. And my mama won. Because when problems come, you face them with courage. And she always told us, if you'll take 1 step, God will take 2. And so I'm here to tell you today with point number 4, lesson number 4 in life learned at Mother's feet, that if you're facing a problem, face it. Get that bulldog tenacity and said, by the grace of God, I'm going to win this battle. And she did. And I share her testimony of her winning 35 years later. So not only did she teach, but she was the example of loving people, being respectful of every human being, of protecting and nurturing the family, and of when you see a problem in your life, you confront it and you deal with it. So that little lesson number 4 is good for the very youngest to the very oldest. If there are issues in your life that must be addressed, address them. And God will help you. And God will deliver you. And God will be with you.